We begin in the Mediterranean. More migrants, more misery. A boat carrying up to 700 capsized off Libya. Nearly 50 have been rescued by Italy's Coast Guard and Navy. Dozens of bodies have been recovered, but hundreds are missing. CCTV's Jack Barton has more from Brussels. He's joining us live. And Jack, what has been the European response to the growing migrant crisis?
The European Council President Donald Tusk says he may call an emergency meeting of all 28 EU leaders to address this situation. Much, of course, will depend on the outcome of a foreign affairs meeting here in Brussels on Monday. Everyone agrees that the situation is getting worse. The death toll is much higher than it was at the same time this year. And everyone also agrees that the coming months will be much more precarious, as these will be the calmest times, or the calmest waters in the Mediterranean. Over the coming months, this is when most people try to attempt this very dangerous journey. But it's been exacerbated over the past 12 months by the lawlessness in Libya. It's become a haven for human trafficking gangs, increasingly packing as many people as they can onto these unseaworthy vessels. This latest incident is typical. A vessel only 20 meters or about 70 feet long with 700 people in it. When they tried to move to one side of the boat to wave down a passing vessel, it capsized. It's exactly the same circumstances that a boat also capsized last week, with the loss of about 400 lives. So a desperate situation demanding urgent action. This is what officials have been saying.
The work that Italy is doing, almost alone, and perhaps sometimes with international help, is truly extraordinary work.
They need help either financially, but substantially, or there has to be something else put in place in a European context.
Nous sommes concernés. La Méditerranée, c'est une mer qui nous est commune.
We consider that the Mediterranean is our common area between Africa and Europe. We must act. I also asked for an urgent meeting with all interior ministers and foreign ministers, a summit of these ministers, all of the ministers of Europe.
Well, Jack, the UN is estimating that, more than 20,000 migrants have died trying to reach Europe over the past couple of decades. Why has some sort of action not been taken sooner?
Well, the EU has actually been scaling back its efforts. Last year, the Italian Navy and Coast Guard had an enormous operation called Mare Nostrum in motion. It was very aggressively, not just operating surveillance in the Mediterranean, but also launching search and rescue operations near the North African coastline, of course, mostly around Libya, where about 90% of these migrants from Africa and the Middle East are transiting through at the moment. That came under a lot of pressure. One of the reasons, of course, was the budget, Italy's economic problems, but another one was many EU member states, including countries like Germany, said this was making it attractive for people to try and make this journey, because they would be intercepted and rescued after being only a short while in the water. So Italy actually scaled it back under pressure from the EU, which replaced it with a much smaller program called Triton, which really just operates border security surveillance operations, not search and rescue. So now these people are really relying on passing cargo ships, commercial vessels, private vessels, and then only when they're spotted by these vessels does the Maltese or the Italian Coast Guard act. So everyone is calling for a scaling up of this sort of program again, but of course everyone also saying that something has to be done with Libya, that until there is stability again in Libya, that its borders cannot be secured. And until that happens, it will be virtually impossible to stop what has been hundreds of thousands of people trying to make that crossing through Libya.
Jack Barton, thank you for the update, reporting live in Brussels.